Thanks.
All right.
Bye.
Our next speaker. Oh, yes. Thanks, Dr. Tadi. Our next speaker is he's also no stranger to this conference. In fact, he is what one could call a professor extraordinaire when it comes to cyber law. But he's also a brother and a good friend and a colleague. His name is Judge Chawki. I have his long CV here, but I'm going to try and make it short. Judge Chawki holds a PhD from the University of Lyon in France. This was followed by a 3-year postdoctoral fellowship at the University in Marseille. He's also a senior judge in Egypt. I also know he has been promoted to a higher court of administration recently. Congratulations to that as well. And Judge Chawki has written over almost over 100 articles on the topic. I mean, this is no joke. If you literally go online and you look for Mohamed Chawki, you will find a plethora of articles. He is also the co-drafter of the famous Malabo Convention. I know that he himself and was working with Mokhtar Yadeli of the African Union. So I think I've said enough, Judge Chawki. Over to you. Judge?
Yeah, I'm here, Sizwe.
Judge Chawki, can you hear us?
Yeah, you hear me? Thank you, my friend, Professor Sizwe. Hello again, everybody. So I have 30 minutes. I will be focusing on...
We can see your slides.
Yeah, very good. I will be doing a presentation today on tackling cybercrime in Egypt, and I will explain in details the legislations in force that have been adopted in this subject. So I will start my presentation by some basics in information security. Information security in general has 3 main principal objectives. First of all, confidentiality of information. Confidentiality of information means that only authorized persons can access the information, and accordingly, we fight against hacking and unauthorized access to computers and networks. After that, we have availability of information 24 hours per week. This means we find the data and information available according to our needs. Finally, we have the protection of the integrity of information. This means that nobody can modify, can change the data and information that we have saved. Risk management. Generally speaking, the risk in information security, as you all know, is a possibility for an offender, for a hacker, to find security gaps in computers and networks and make an impact. The impact can include adding data to the system without authorization, as I mentioned, modifying or deleting the data, adding spywares, for example, etc. So, generally speaking, the risk in information security is cybercrime. In information security, we have a very important rule. We don't have a computer system that is secured 100%. And I give you an example. We have teenagers that succeeded in accessing the database of the Pentagon Ministry of American Ministry of Defense. On such a basis, managing the risk is the best thing we can do, because the risk costs us money, and the absence of security means costs us more money. An important question: what do we mean by cybercrime? There are many definitions proposed in Europe, in the United States, and in Africa regarding this threat. Sometimes we replace the word cybercrime by computer crime, by ICT's crime, or high-tech crime to refer to offenses committed in cyberspace. According to the definition proposed by the United Nations, a computer system can be either object or subject or tool for offenses. A computer system object for offenses such as unauthorized access to computer systems, such as sending malicious codes, such as zombie networks. Here, the computer has been the victim, has been the object of the crime. After that, we have a computer system as a tool for the offense, for the crime, such as online money laundering, or 419 scam, or online fraud, or online identity theft. Here, the computer has been used as a tool to commit the offense, or COVID-19 scam, for example, which appeared after COVID-19. Finally, we have a computer system as a support for the offense, such as drug dealers who use their computers to save data regarding trafficking drugs, for example. So here, the computer is a support for the offense. There is no doubt that cybercrime is a growing concern to countries at all levels worldwide. According to statistics, we have 154 countries that have adopted, that have enacted cybercrime legislations. Europe is the highest adoption rate, 93%. Asia and Pacific has a lower rate, 55%. This represents, in fact, a big challenge because we can tackle cybercrime, we can fight against cybercrime without having specific legislations to fight this threat. According to recent statistics, 79%, we have 79% of countries with specific legislations to tackle cybercrime. We have 5% of countries with draft legislation, 13% countries with no legislation, and 3% of countries with no data. Since the main topic of this conference is cyber laws in Africa, what is the current status of cybercrime laws in Africa? Currently, some African countries have embarked on designing and formulating ICT policies, but the majority of them are still in early stage of cyber legislation development and enactment. Unfortunately, and I say unfortunately, only few countries in Africa have moved ahead and have enacted cybercrime laws. Some examples include, and I say some examples because I don't have accurate statistics about all the African countries that adopted legislations. We have Egypt, for example, and I will be dealing with the Egyptian legislation today. We have South Africa, we have Algeria, we have Morocco, and we have Senegal. So back to Egypt. ICTs have developed, as we can see, rapidly in Egypt in the previous years, with an increase in the number of internet users. The Egyptian Ministry of Telecommunications is playing an important role in this subject. If we have a look at this chart, in 2013, the penetration was 40%. In 2016, it increased to almost 48%. In 2018, it was 50%, and in 2019, the penetration was 54%. Now, some statistics about internet usage in Egypt. Egypt is currently classified as the second country in Africa by internet users after Nigeria, and is classified the 19th country worldwide. In 2020, we had 3 million users on Twitter, 38 million users on Facebook, and 55 million users on internet. Now, an important point, the legal framework to fight against cybercrime in Egypt. As you can see from this slide, Egypt has adopted many cyber law legislations for data protection and cybercrime and the protection of minors online. The most recent law in Egypt is law number 151 for 2020. This law has been adopted just some months ago regarding the protection of personal data and the regulation of the transfer of personal data between public entities. 2 years ago, Egypt adopted cybercrime law number 175 for the year 2018. The third part of this law, starting from Articles 13, has a long list of offenses, such as hacking, unauthorized access offenses, which is punished by fine and imprisonment, crime on infringement of exceeding the right of access. The law has crimes such as sniffing. Sniffing, for example, in this law is punished by either imprisonment or fine. Also in this law, we have a very interesting article, which is Article 30. Article 30 in this law deals with the liability of internet service providers. If internet service providers don't block websites of legal nature, such as child pornography, cyber crimes, hacking, etc., according to a decision by the competent court, the punishment will be imprisonment or fine or both penalties for the responsible of the internet service provider. Another interesting article in this law, webmasters are responsible according to this law if they don't inform competent authorities of a crime that they know according to the nature of their work. Another important law in the Egyptian legal system is a law number 15 for the year 2004. This law recognizes the electronic signature as a legal value. The law has a list of crimes that relate to electronic signature, such as forgery of electronic signature, forgery of accredited certificate, manipulation of electronic document, or unauthorized access to an electronic signature system. All of these offenses, according to this law, are punished by imprisonment or fine or both. After that, in Egypt, we have the Protection of Minors law number 12. It has been adopted in 1996. In the Egyptian legal system, I must tell you that a minor is a person under 18 years old. According to this law, we have 4 main offenses: cybering, grooming, exposure to obscenity, and possession of pornographic material. We should know that according to the Egyptian law, having child pornography material for your own use is considered an offense. And many people don't quite understand that concept in Egypt. In Egypt, it is an offense whether child pornography content is possession, advertising, transmission, distribution, etc. This will cause the offender to be sentenced up to 2 years of imprisonment and payment of a fine. Another important point related to child pornography: internet service providers in Egypt are not liable for pornographic material placed on their systems as long as they don't have actual knowledge of these contents. However, once an internet user notifies the internet service provider about this content, internet service providers are obliged to remove the pornographic material within a reasonable time. Otherwise, there will be suspension of their service. Another important point in Egypt, in the Egyptian legal system, is the construction of economic courts. Economic courts in Egypt have been constructed in 2008. They have jurisdictions over economic issues in both civil and criminal proceedings. So there are civil circuits and criminal circuits in the economic courts, including, of course, cybercrime, the stock market, the Central Bank of Egypt, the violation of intellectual property rights on the internet, and other matters. Economic courts have very qualified judges that have trainings in Egypt and abroad to deal with new crimes such as cyber crimes. And these are special courts, as I mentioned, to examine cyber crimes. Finally, in Egypt, we have a special cybercrime unit. This cybercrime unit is a specialized section within the Egyptian Ministry of Interior. It was founded in 2002. The main role of this unit is to provide technical assistance in the detection and investigation of cyber crimes and to help victims. The unit is made up of police officers who are trained in the investigation of crimes that take place in cyberspace, and this unit cooperates with Interpol and Europol. This unit has also a hotline. If you are a victim of cybercrime, you just call the hotline and the offense will be investigated. It has direct link with the General Prosecutor Office. In such a case, the investigation will be done by the public prosecutions and will be done by the Ministry of Interior to identify the offender. So we have reached the end of the presentation. I have three main recommendations. First of all, the laws need to conform to international standards and international models in order to be integrated within the global legal framework. That's very important. Second recommendation, cyber law should be technology neutral. That way, the law is flexible and able to adapt quickly to the fluid global environment. That's an important point. The major problem is that the advancement in technology is very quick, is very fast, and we take time to adopt specific legislations to tackle cybercrime. As I mentioned, unfortunately, Egypt adopted its law very late. It was adopted, the cybercrime law was adopted in 2018. Okay, the British law, for example, was adopted in 1990. The French law was adopted in 1988. We took long time to adopt a specific legislation. So the problem is not only to adopt legislations, but also to update them, because the advancement in technology is very quick and is done very quickly, very rapidly, but we take time to update our legislations. Last recommendation, awareness raising is very important, and that's the role of the association and by the organization of conferences and seminars to increase the awareness against cybercrime. That's the major role of our association, to increase the awareness against cybercrime and to inform everyone about the new threats in cybercrime. I have finished my presentation. Thank you so much. You can have here my email if you have later on any questions, and that's the website of our association. If you are a victim of cybercrime, we have a team of volunteers that help cybercrime victims. Just contact us, and this is done for free. Thank you so much. Thank you, Professor Sizwi.
Thank you, Judge Chawki, for a splendid presentation, telling us also about how cybercrime has developed in Egypt. It's always nice to hear what our fellow African counterparts in the Arab Maghreb are doing. Thank you very much for that. It's now open for question time. Are there any questions from the floor for Judge Chawki? I for one have one question, Judge Chawki.
Yeah, go ahead.
How do you think the law should deal with crimes that emanate from artificial intelligence? How do you think the law should deal with that? Who should be liable in that event, if anyone at all?
Yeah, Sizwi, let me tell you that I have just published an article in a French journal about the criminal responsibility for artificial intelligence. And let me tell you again that one of the challenges of ICTs and one of the challenges of technologies is the adoption of law and is the application of law. That's why I mentioned that we should update our legislations and we should update our laws, like that we can tackle against cybercrime. As for artificial intelligence, Sizwi, the question is very open because we have several possibilities. The legal responsibility of robots, for example, is the programmer who programmed the robot, or the responsibility is for the robot itself? That's an open question. To date, we don't have an answer. As long as, according to the criminal law, according to the criminal classic law, as long as someone doesn't have the intention to commit the crime, he is not criminally responsible. Have you got it?
Thank you for that, Judge. I see
have
there's a
question.
further.
Yeah.
Yeah, Judge. Actually, first, there's some comments. The one is from Interconsult 21 Global.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mohamed Chawki, for the presentation. Then there's a message here from Advocate Chikalange. Advocate Chikalange says, is the assistance of victims of cybercrime open to everyone in the world? And then I see Iman has also said, thank you, Dr. Mohamed Chawki, for your amazing presentation. So I assume the question is the
assistance of victims.
Yes.
Well, Sizwi, as you know, the association is located in France, okay? And we have regional and international chapters to tackle against cybercrime worldwide. However, currently we have 4 or 5 chapters only. We have one in Brazil, as I mentioned yesterday, one in South Africa chaired by you, one in Lebanon, one in Morocco, and one in Australia. In these countries, we can help very easily cybercrime victims because we have direct contact with law enforcement. However, in other countries, we try to help the victims, either by finding them lawyers, for example, or by trying to contact law enforcement. If we succeed, that's okay. If we don't succeed, we do our best. However, the association, the assistance of victims, to answer the question, the assistance of victims of cyber crimes is open to everyone around the world, and we do our best.
Okay. Then there's a comment from Natia Brown from Cape Town. Thank you, Dr. Chawki. How often do you think cybercrime legislation should be updated?
Well, I can't mention a specific time, but let me tell you something, Sizwi. Whilst I was doing my PhD in France, okay, I started in 2003, okay. I was surprised of the American and European systems because they update their legislations regularly, especially the United States. In my PhD, I was dealing with American federal law and the national legislations in Europe and in France. So doing my PhD on the first year, in the second year, I remark that legislations have been updated. I can't specify a specific time, but we can't rely on an old legislation to be applied 5 years or 6 years later on an offense. We should update them at least each year. I can say as an expert, at least each year. And this differs from one parliament to another, of course, and from one country to another country. Hello?
Yes, Judge. Then there's another question here, Judge, from Mlandeni Zweni from East London.
Yeah.
Who should fund the establishment of certs, government or business?
I think governments, because there might be a conflict of interest within businesses. I think governments are neutral. But there can be
another question from Interconsult.
Okay, okay.
In Egypt, integrated with another court in the world in terms of executive power?
No, the economic courts that I mentioned in my presentation are not a part of the executive power, but rather the judicial power. We have the separation of power in Egypt. We have 3 main powers, and we have the separation of powers in Egypt. So as long as we are dealing with the judicial system, as long as we are dealing with courts, as long as we are dealing with laws, economic courts, cybercrime courts, as is mentioned in the question, are a part of the judicial system, not within the executive power.
Thank you, Judge. Then there's a comment here from Advocate Nsaluba from the South African Defence Force. Thank you for the presentation. And then lastly, there's a comment also here from Advocate Chikalange. Judge Chawki, I was wondering if Egypt or the association can assist on issues of capacity building?
Yeah, let me tell you that it is not an Egyptian association. It is a French association based in France and founded according to the Egyptian law. The headquarters are located in Paris and we cooperate worldwide. Of course, the association can participate in capacity building by several strategies that have been adopted by the board members. And as I mentioned, one of the main targets of the association is to increase the awareness against cybercrime by the organization of conferences and workshops, etc., etc. And of course, one of our main targets is capacity building. There's another question.
I see there's another question.
Money laundering.
Oh, you see the question, Judge? Yes, you want to deal with it?
Yeah, well, money laundering, okay, if money laundering has been committed online, it is considered a cybercrime and accordingly it will be examined by economic courts because economic courts in Egypt have the specialization of cyber crimes. So if money laundering has been committed online or has integrated ICTs, in such a case, it is considered a cyber crime and will be examined by economic courts.
Thank you, Judge. Are there further questions for Judge Chawki before we proceed to the next presentation? Let me see. It looks like we're out of time, Judge, as well.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Judge, co-chair of this conference as well. It has been a lovely presentation, and I think you can see from the questions that the presentation was received well.
Yeah.
Thank you, Judge.
You're welcome, Sizvi.
All right. So now the next presenter, I'm actually going to